You're tuning into the Careering with Cameron podcast, your safe place for asking all the dumb questions about finding a job. So you're ready to build a resume. Did you know there are no perfect resumes? Many times we spend so much time building the perfect resume for an opportunity that we miss all of the criteria that we really need to have in that file and in the cover letter as well. Let's share a few ideas with you on how to have maybe not a perfect resume, but the resume that's effective and gets you where you want to be. What if your resume could get you past the AI screeners and land directly in the hands of the hiring manager you so desperately want to connect with? You're about to hear the secrets to a great resume. And it isn't what you'd think. It's not so much about what you include. Many times it's about how you put that resume together, what the key components are that can catch the person's eye within the first few seconds of them looking at your file. If you've ever felt like your resume gets lost in the shuffle, people don't notice it, maybe they don't even review it, today's episode is for you. Let's help you get beyond that screener, help you get away from being lost in the process. Let's be able to identify the skills that you need to highlight from your own background for this opportunity. This topic is near and dear to my heart. This is something that we work with clients on regularly, and typically it comes into perspective from two different sites. One is the client who is focused on finding a new opportunity and is just not sure where to begin. It's hard to tell a story when you are the story. It takes some help sometimes to put that story together, to ask questions, to be able to identify things that are interesting to the reader, not just to the teller. They also come to us from the opposite side of the spectrum, which is being perfect and wanting the resume to be perfect. And what I have found is that through coaching, many people get to the point with the resume where they get stuck and they're not really ready for a job search until the resume is quote unquote ready. And the bottom line is the resume is never 100% ready. It's a subjective tool to help you find a job. That subjective tool will change as your interest in different positions will change. So perfect doesn't really exist right out of the gates. Perfect is what gets you the job, and that resume may be very different from previous ones. Let's jump into how to create that resume that will help you land not only the person's attention, but also that job. So let's start with some key points in building the perfect resume for your job. The key points we want to start with are things that are typically overlooked. I usually coach people on making sure that they're checking these boxes as they move through the build of their resume. Number one, don't name the resume for the position you're applying. Have a code so that you know which resume you've submitted to where, and track which resume to which position. The reason I'm telling you that is if, as the reader, you receive a file that you know is written specifically for that job, that tells you everything that you're supposed to see is there. It would make me personally want to dig a little further to understand why a specific resume needed to be created for this job, and it makes me wonder what the reality of your background is, which means I'm going to go to LinkedIn. LinkedIn's hard to have multiple resumes in, right? Because you have basically one profile. The bottom line is this: utilize some type of code that you can organize your resumes. You will have multiple so that you know which one you submitted to which position, and you're tracking that ideally in a spreadsheet. That code should be something that doesn't really make sense to someone else. So it could be, in my case, KC 10. Or A, or C, or whatever it may be. It's a code that you use, you understand it, other people won't. That's what we're looking for. Second is look at your history and make sure you're highlighting the skills that are the strongest in your background, and then make sure that they relate to the skills you would like to build on and or gain in your next opportunity. So as you're going through the resume and making sure that you have all the pieces that you need, one way to do that would be to look at job descriptions that catch your eye and try to incorporate some of those thoughts to mirror your experience that is there, right? The experience that you have, to ensure that that's representative of your background. So making sure that you have those pieces together, right? And that's some of what we're doing with AI, where we are matching the resume and the job description and then ensuring that there aren't as many gaps as there otherwise could be. Very similar. As you're building the resume, you want to start with, what do I want to do? What is interesting to me? What do I hope to do in my next job or my first job? And make sure that that is a flow that you have in front of you as you're moving forward. I always recommend having multiple formats of the resume. I don't recommend submitting multiple formats of the resume to the same position. So you should have a PDF version and also a Word version or a Google Sheets version or whatever it may be, whatever you're comfortable working in, have them set up. What should you submit? People love asking this question. There's a lot of speculation about what formats they should submit, which ones can be read, which ones can't be read. Here's the bottom line. AI is created in a way that it can read and scan PDFs. PDF is going to be able to be submitted in a way that the reader will see it in its intended form, okay? A Word document may not be received in its intended form. It may shift, the formatting may be wacky. Use a PDF, and we can certainly go into more detail around how AI works and the types of readers that it includes in terms of not only the text, but also the language so that it can interpret. We can do all that. But the bottom line is the PDF is the way to go to make sure that your resume stays clear and professional the whole way through. You have a Word doc version because you're going to edit it, probably a lot. Keep that handy, keep that coded, make sure that you know which job that was submitted to, have that spreadsheet, right? Those are the key pieces in terms of the beginnings. That's the foundation that I always try to push people on, is making sure that that's there. Now, next part, when you're looking at a resume, you're going to have your contact information. It's going to have your name, it's going to have your location. It doesn't have to have your street address, but it should definitely have town, phone number, ideally LinkedIn profile so they can find you. And I would recommend that if you're applying to a position that's not local, that you have a way to utilize a local address so that it appears as though you either are going to be local or you have significant interest in living in that area. I'm not saying to make up an address. I'm saying maybe you have a family member or a friend or someone there that you can ask if it'd be okay to use their address as your mailing address to submit for these positions. They're probably somebody that is going to know you're moving, right? Or thinking of moving. Those are the big pieces. Make sure that on that resume, you have obviously contact information up on top. Then we get to summary. The summary is interesting because it's usually the first place people go when they're reviewing your resume. So you have your initial impact is name, summary. They're spending a little time on the summary and they're moving right to your first position that you've been in. If there isn't a first position, it's a co-op, it's an internship, it's school experience where you've been working in a lab or something along those lines. Something like that is the first place they're going to go. So let's talk a little bit about the summary. What do you include in a summary? Summary is your highlight reel. It's a few sentences, including major accomplishments, what you're interested in pursuing, and also how you have supported that idea of what you're interested in pursuing with some form of experience. If you're a student, it may be a little bit more challenging to have work experience supporting it, but certainly there should be experience in a classroom, in a class, in a group, in a volunteer opportunity that supports that interest. That's your highlight reel, okay? It is not to be overly wordy, but it is to essentially declare, I'm interested in an opportunity where I am working in the following, and I have experience with it from this, right? That's not like cookie cutter, but that gives you the idea of the direction it should go. The next piece is making sure that you have all of the experience that you have behind you collected in your resume. That should be organized by employer, and if it is a situation where you have multiple positions with each employer, then break it out so that we can see you had multiple roles and you were promoted or you were able to be considered for a new role and they kept you there and moved you to that role. Those are all the things that we're looking for you to be able to share with us. So that's an important facet of this. Those pieces should be bullets. This should be the easiest document ever to read. The easier it is to read, the better it is for you. And by the way, easier it is for you to read, the more it should not have acronyms that the person may not understand, especially my friends who are in STEM type fields. Any type of science, even mathematics, actually even outside of STEM. Engineering as well, that is obviously STEM, but even roles that are outside of STEM where you're going to collect acronyms, break down the acronyms so that people can understand what you're saying. And I realize that your hiring manager or your department that you're applying into probably understands your acronym, but your human resource person may not. The person reviewing on the initial scan of your resume may not know the acronyms that you're using, and you may not make it through that screening because of that. Make it clean, clear, please use bullets. Couple other key points. Make sure that you are also utilizing action verbs. Action verbs the whole way through the resume, and you should also be very clear and conscious of the fact that formatting should match the entire way through. Font size obviously is going to change based on heading or body or title, but the actual font should not. Make sure that your formatting is very clean and is very succinct so that the eye easily glides over the paper or screen for that matter, and you're making it as easy as possible. This is one of the keys that I always share in coaching, which is you want the process of reaching out to you to be so easy that the person doesn't have to spend an additional second trying to find information. That goes into, this is not resume based, but it is email based, making sure you have your contact information in your email as a return, whether phone number absolutely should be included, and also obviously your LinkedIn profile when you're emailing someone. The reason for that is we don't want this time of so much information flowing everywhere. We don't want someone to get your resume and have to go look up your phone number in order to reach out to you and be distracted by something else that happens and never call. And it can happen. So make sure it's easy as humanly possible for them to reach you. That includes when you are leaving a voicemail for someone. If they call and you're calling them back, please leave your phone number and make sure that they can reach you. I understand most cases the phone number is going to be in the phone or the computer or whatever it may be, but just make it easy. Just humor me, okay? So here's a couple more things that we want to make sure we include in the resume. If you are graduating from college or a continuing education program, master's program, whatever it may be, and there's a GPA, you're probably going to need to include the GPA to find an opportunity. In most cases, those job postings will say that they're requiring to know the GPA. So it may be something you need to include. You may also be tempted to include references on your resume. I would go with references available upon request. I would not want to share my references all over the place before I've had an opportunity to speak with someone. That is certainly something that you can share with them. It might be something that if somebody's written you a reference, you can share that with your submittal, but I would not want name and phone number on my resume going out everywhere to share with the general population somebody's phone number. Also, make sure that you have some opportunities where you have volunteered or been part of a group. This is very similar to when you're going from high school to college. The colleges are looking for how you have contributed in total, not just in a classroom. Were you on teams? Did you volunteer? Did you help out with things? Same kind of thing with a job. They want to know that you're well-rounded. So making sure that you have things like that to include on your resume is important. Also making sure, again, that your resume lines up with your LinkedIn profile. And you need to have a LinkedIn profile if you're going to be applying to jobs. They're going to look for that very, very quickly when they initially talk to you about this position or they're considering you for this position. LinkedIn should also have a headshot. It doesn't have to be a headshot where you pay someone to take it. It can be something that a friend takes as long as it's professional. Making sure that, it's something with a nice backdrop, not at a party, not something where you're in front of somebody's car. It's something professional where you're in front of something scenic. It's a nice picture. It's something that you can share, right? So we want to make sure we have a headshot on LinkedIn. Headshot on the resume, not so much. Depending on very specific situations in marketing, maybe, but not necessarily for folks in STEM fields that are looking for opportunities. Beyond there, so we're going to have things we're volunteering for. We are going to have our summary set up that's going to be very clean. We don't need to use every single inch of white space on the paper or screen. What we need to do is make sure that the bullets are thoughtful and that they align well with the organization. If you have volunteered for an organization, or a company or something like that, if you volunteered for them previously, internship, whatever it may be, make sure that's listed. If you are volunteering for an organization, probably a nonprofit organization, that the company you're interested in also has supported in the past, make sure that you're naming that because that's a direct connection for you. That's a great tie. Somebody in the organization probably knows you from volunteering. Also, keep in mind, when you're volunteering, people notice. So make sure that your volunteering time is professional. So after you have created the resume and you have all of the body set up, all of the previous qualifications, all of the things that you've been able to accomplish in your career so far, the next piece is go through all those bullets and think about where you can quantify them. So a lot of times I run into situations where people have no data on their resume. There are no numbers, and we need to make sure we have numbers. We need to make sure that we can quantify our experience and demonstrate what actually happened. It's very easy to say you walked down the street, but when you say you walked a quarter of a mile and what the pace was, that's very impressive and much more specific. I would make sure that you have some quantifiable data in the resume so that you are a real person. You have real accomplishments. You pay attention to detail. You tracked things. Those are all good things to have. Companies are going to look for that. So please make sure they are included. So we're most of the way through building the resume at this point. I encourage you to have, at least in the first draft, have a friend, colleague, somebody maybe you worked on an internship with, review your resume and give you their perspective. I know we have AI now, and I know the previous episode was all about AI and how to use it in your job search, but I'm also telling you to use your human friends around you and make sure that they understand the resume and makes sense to them. If they're left with a bullet that they just can't comprehend what you're talking about, that's a good indication it needs to be clarified. Make sure that you do that. Last part of this episode, there are going to be mistakes that are going to happen. You're going to make mistakes. In the job search, it's going to happen. I have had people frequently, more frequently than you can imagine, that have come to me and said, I submitted the resume, I was so excited about this job. I sent them a cover letter, I sent them a resume, and then I realized I sent the cover letter from a different job to the job I was interested in, and it's not the same company. These things are going to happen. It's unfortunate. I will tell you, check your work multiple times to make sure that doesn't happen to you. But if it does, and it may, most people on the opposite side of the desk also put their clothes on the same way you do, also eat lunch the same way you do. Mistakes do happen. It's not the end of the world. We would like it to be something that doesn't happen, but it may. And if that is the situation, then move forward, okay? I would say in an interview, if that happens, okay, so let's just say you submit, wrong company, you submit the cover letter, I would go to that interview with extra copies of the resume that you want to present them with, and make sure that you have that, ideally if it's in person, that you can put it in front of each person who's going to interview you. Always have extra copies of the resume with you in case somebody else joined your meeting and they haven't had a chance to review your resume. This is a great way for them to be able to review it quickly. It's also a great way for you to course correct if, in fact, some of the information is a little bit different. You can use that time to do that, and if they ask the question, say, well, I made some updates that I felt were appropriate based on this position and highlighted some experience I thought you'd want to know about. That's it. End of story. Move forward. Mistakes are going to happen. The key one is double check your work. The key one is you're going to want to rush because, again, you're going to see there are 700,000 people who've applied to this position and I need to apply right now. Fine, but the next 5 minutes will not change how many thousand people have applied. And also, we're looking at this as you're applying to a role and using your resume and cover letter, but that's the first step of many. It is not the last step, and it certainly should not be the only step you take in trying to find an opportunity. It should be the first step, and the next step should be to connect to people who are there or people who know people who are there so you can network into that role, i.e. in episode number 1. We want you to be connecting as well. So having a job posting just says there's smoke, right? There's an indicator that they're hiring. That's great. But the next piece is making sure that you're the person on the short list that gets considered for the role. And that happens by you connecting to people there. Very important. Lastly, your cover letters should be coded the same way as the resume so you can match them up. And all of this information should be tracked somewhere so that if someone calls you or texts you or whatever it may be, you're able to go back and look at exactly what you sent them, whether it's cover or resume or even additional information if that's the case, but make sure that all of that is there and succinct and that you're able to quickly look at it and have a knowledgeable conversation with them without them having to wait. On that note, if they call and you are out someplace, you are at a store, you are at the gym, wherever, it is 100% okay to let them know that you wanted to make sure you answered the call. Can you call them right back at whatever time it will take you to get to a quiet place? Please don't have the phone call in the mall. Please also don't have the phone call on a treadmill, okay? You want to be able to do this in a way that you can both have a good conversation. So that's 100% fine to do that. Lastly, make sure that you're keeping all this information in one place, and you may want to consider using a separate email for your job search. So that separate email might be the one that you put on your resume. Some colleges and universities do not maintain your college and or university email for very long after you have graduated. So you might want to have a separate backup email that you're using for just this purpose that's like Gmail or something like that. Make sure that the email address is professional. Also, that will help with some of the spam that you're probably going to see when you're applying to positions that gets into various places, various ways. So that's another key piece. Lastly, there is a lot of phishing that goes on and a lot of spam that goes on in job search world, sadly, now, because they can gather a lot of information. Make sure that when you are approached about a job, you are able to track it back to understand where you applied, or if you didn't apply, how they got your information. Make sure you're Google searching these people before you're calling them back. If they're asking questions that seem suspicious, I would stop and make sure that that's a real person that you've actually applied to, or ask them why they would need to know that information. There's unfortunately a lot of people who are being foiled into sharing information that they don't need to a job interview that's not a job interview, and therefore they have some identity thefts that are happening. Please make sure that you're doing some research on the person you're talking to, and it's not just on the fly. So in this episode, we covered how to build an impactful resume, how to get people's attention, how to basically use your cover letter as a means to connect with them, but also how to have very impactful bullets using data to support your background and your interest in this opportunity. I look forward to our next episode where we will continue to cover interviewing skills and figuring out how to best position yourself in an interview to get that job. I hope to see you then. Thanks for tuning in. If you've enjoyed this episode, please make sure that you subscribe. Please give us a rating, 5 stars, and make sure that you share it with colleagues who may also be looking for some help with the job search. See you next time. Stay in the loop at careeringwithcameron.com/talent connect, or check out our website, www.talent-connect.net.